huge thanks to Melanie. She is passionate about this project. You can probably tell from the way that she presents it that an awful lot of thinking has gone into it, and I hope you found that as stimulating as I did. Of course, the report covers this whole world from many different viewpoints, from the brand viewpoint, consumer, marketing, and agency. But tonight, because we're at the IPA, we've chosen to put a bit more emphasis on the agency dimension of that in our panel discussion. And in putting our panel together, we'd have lots of fun because we didn't want to find people who would think the same way. We wanted to find people who would do things differently. So on our panel tonight, we do have an IPA representative, but we've also researched the market to find other types of businesses that are out there and get their perspective on our content to see what we can glean from looking at different perspectives. So I'd love to invite, in order probably, Katie from Mother, Joint Head of Strategy and a participant in the delivery of the report, in the formation of the report. Sarah Wood from Unruly, has more titles than any of us, I think. So everything to do with Unruly, really. CEO, co-founder, CMO, So hopefully there are more people, Sarah. We'll find out more about that. James Haycock, who runs a new type of business, Adaptivelab. And then Miles Welsh, who is outside of the business, looking at it from the outside in. So please, welcome to the stage. Thanks very much. So I thought rather than try rather badly to describe what each of our panelists does, I would start by asking them briefly to give us a flavour of the type of business they think they are in, and also to try and relate it to the model that Melanie described. Is there a centre of gravity to which they can relate in the model as described by Melanie, so that gives us a good start point for thinking where their points of view will come from. So perhaps we just start at the end and work down, and if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves. Thanks, Katie.
Hello, I'm Katie Mackay. I'm Joint Head of Strategy at Mother and Vice Chair on the IPA Strategy Unit team. I was lucky enough to spend a day, I can't believe it was in January, here. I've turned it on, but it's not got a red light. I think the battery might be dead.
This one.
Got a red light, I don't know.
I can just shout. I don't.
We're all quite noisy, aren't
Yeah.
we? We're used to projecting. We work in marketing.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just raise the voice. If you can't hear at the back, put your hand up. To spend a day in January working through all of these models, but I know we're not allowed to say anything about what we thought yet. So I guess where do we sit? My natural affinity to our heartland for Mother was most definitely extreme top left in the brand me queue. It was immediately where I gravitated towards and where I could envisage a bright, wonderful future. That's not to say that as an agency we aren't exploring other areas. So Incubate is an area that we have been doing a lot of work and thinking in. We open up our space and have done for 18 years to start up businesses, and are increasingly doing that for makers, designers, artists, and bringing them in so that we can learn from them and they can learn from us. But I do have some interesting stories about the quadrant that I was put in to work out a future model and how bleak it was at the start of the day. But that's me.
Miles Welch. I currently work as a non-exec, and I run a growth consultancy called Milestone. I've come from the inside out and gone back in a few times as well. So I used to run an agency. I've worked in agencies pretty much all of my career, and ended up running a business called Digitas in London before it merged and then got bought by various other people. And worked as a strategy consultant for many years, and for the last 5 years I've been working with agencies as a non-exec, and probably worked with about 65, I think it worked out the other day. It's quite a few, so hopefully I can give some perspective about what other people are doing, and not 65 non-exec roles, but worked on projects as well, but I think, yeah. Currently 10 agencies I'm working with, qualifying myself if I get any more laughs in the audience. But yeah, so 65 agencies over the last 5 years. So I've seen quite a few different business models in quite a few different sectors. I work with SaaS businesses, with PR businesses, with social media agencies, with search agencies. So hopefully that gives them a different perspective.
So,
Hi everyone. I'm Sarah Wood, co-founder of Unruly. We're a video ad technology company. There's about 200 of us now across 15 different offices. And what we do is we help brands, we evaluate their content and we predict virality before launch. And how we do that is we measure emotional connection, emotional intensity, and also social motivations to share. And then we distribute that content across the open web using formats that are very pro-consumer, so where the user is in control, so user-initiated formats, no broadcasting, no shouting at consumers. So from that introduction, I hope you can get a real sense of where Unruly stands in that quadrant. So I guess I'd put us at the top right hand. We're really interested in emotional connection because we see that it drives lots of shareability and digital and buzz, but also longer term metrics around business value. But the clients that we work with, interestingly, some of them are very interested in the softer emotions and they're interested in creating uplifting, inspirational, sad content. But lots of others are really interested in cognitive, more cognitive psychological responses and thinking about enlightenment and knowledge. And they would fall more down to the south pole of the index there.
James.
Hi, I'm James Haycock. I run a business called Adaptivelab. We're a product and service design company. We work with ambitious leaders at companies like Barclays, Vodafone, Tesco to help them design and deliver digital propositions. And so a lot of our clients are experiencing the threat of a whole new competitor set that look, act and think very differently to the businesses that they've been used to competing with for years. And we take that approach of thinking, so the technology startup approach, into these large organisations and help them to deliver products in that space. And so I guess if we were to put ourselves somewhere, I'd probably say more of a provocateur. We're having to think a lot about stimulating the conversation, making introductions that our clients are looking for, and helping them think about how they themselves need to change to be able to operate in this new world. So not just doing it for them, but doing it with them, often in their office or ours, and while doing so, trying to sort of help with knowledge transfer to enable them to learn the way that we do it.
So I hope you agree, a rather interesting mix on the panel. And I thought the first area we could perhaps talk about, there's many things we could talk about, so we've had to limit it, obviously, to 4 or 5. Just the future role of an agency. Even the last report sort of hinted at the threat of disintermediation, as they called it then. And I think there's a world out there which equally would like to say that the role of the agency, as it currently stands, is somewhat questionable. In the report itself, it says, for some, there is too much baggage in existing agencies to reinvent. Those with an entrepreneurial spirit will set up new agencies to start from a different place. And so I thought it would be really interesting to get a perspective from the people on the panel for their journey and where they're coming from. Sarah, I'd like to talk to Sarah. Sarah doesn't call herself an agency. In fact, she got very cross when I called her that term. So here's a new style of agency. Perhaps I can introduce it like that. And I know that Sarah's formation has been heavily influenced by Silicon Valley. So I'd love for you to take us through your journey to get to the sort of business that you're currently in.
So we would see ourselves as a tech company. A third of our team are engineers. And then about another 20% are working in insight, they're data scientists, and they're working on the tech platform. But I guess you could say that a lot of the work we do, we work very closely with agencies because we're very collaborative. So what I see is a shift away from a competitive landscape towards a collaborative landscape. And the people that are going to win in this new normal landscape are the ones that are interested in sharing, are interested in working together, learning from each other and partnering. I love the fact you talk about us as a kind of a Silicon Valley model. I've never heard that before, but I really like it. I'm going to keep saying it. I think what you're thinking there is we're very tied into universities and academia. I think that's one of the elements you're thinking of. So I'm a lecturer at Cambridge, and I lecture in online video culture, mashups, memes, and lolitics. We have lots of fantastic courses. It's run out of the medieval and modern languages faculty. It's just insane. And it comes back to something that Melanie was saying about why we're writing 10,000-word dissertations when we ought to be tweeting. And it was making me rethink how I'm going to evaluate my course next year. But yes, we're very much tied into academia there, and academics use our data, and they have done from day one. And our data set now is the largest data set on the planet of video sharing behavior. So it covers YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, blogosphere, lots of other platforms. And it's only by opening up that platform to other people who can come in, disentangle all the data, that we've actually been able to build out our product set. So this is where I think the collaborative model is really key. Whether you call yourself a tech company or an agency, I think that's going to be crucial.
Thank you very much. And James, who I have only met this evening, but was introduced to me as a 20-something who could march into boardrooms and revolutionize the way they thought. That made me think he was very attractive, and we ought to be hearing from him.
Who was it that said that? So, dream, I think.
Let's find out if it's true. So what's your model?
So I guess we could say that we're a consultancy or a studio. I do think there's a role for a smart group of people who intimately understand the business that their clients work in and the evolving world outside it. Whether you call it an agency or something else, there'll always be a role for a really smart bunch of people who bring new thinking into an organisation which is otherwise trying to think about how it evolves its legacy, evolves its way of thinking, and how it serves a new customer base. So whether you call it X or Y, I don't know, but yes, there'll definitely be a role for that.
Thank you. And Miles, a perspective from your vast experience of the future direction of travel, you feel, for the majority of agencies.
Was I introduced as a 40-something? Yeah, fair enough. Yes, I guess from, it's a really tough time, I think, out there. I think that, there's increasing competitions from consultancies, and the diverse talent pool needed now is getting ever and ever increasing. I don't think any particular business model wins out as such, but I think there are certain patterns with businesses that I work with that seem to be what makes them successful, what gives them longevity. I think the main one is that there was a wonderful quote actually from one of your speakers at Adweek, it's Ian Armstrong from JLR, who said, brands will be in permanent transformation, always in transition. I think the same thing can apply to agencies moving forward. And I think that need to remain agile, I think it's a very overused term, I don't mean that in the software delivery aspect, but in terms of the business model being agile, and always be thinking about change as a good thing and a permanent transformation and permanent change in the business. I think those are the business models will end up being successful. And there's a lovely example of one of my clients gave me once of it's like flying a plane, taking the wings off mid-flight and putting them back on again. I think that adage is very apt. Yeah.
If I could just pick up on that point, actually. So I think it's quite interesting this. We did a session recently where we were trying to work out where we kind of sat in the competitive landscape. And recently, all the opportunities we've been looking at have not been with other agencies. They've been with new consultancies, some of whom come from an agency background, but increasingly it's much bigger, hairier businesses like IBM and Accenture and people like that. And actually, interestingly, we found is that if you were to kind of take off the logo on their website, or ours, or a whole bunch of other people, actually the language is very similar. So, that's a really interesting space to be thinking about, because those organisations are connected very differently to the boardroom. So, the people that own the P&Ls, that are driving the future vision, are the ones that are having lunches with McKinseys and the Bains and those types of businesses.
Can I just come in on that though and say you're absolutely right, the language will be similar, but it's not about the language, it's about how companies behave.
Yep.
And I think that is one of the big divergences that we see. There are lots of big companies who see agile and think, yes, absolutely, we need to be agile, we need to move quickly, and they can talk the talk,
but they can't move.
But they can't actually move.
It's very true.
Which is a great way to get into our next point, really. I think picking up on what you've all said, our last President's agenda was around this theme of adapt. And one of the things that was central to it was this idea of what does commercial creativity look like going forward? And what does that mean for the creative department or the creative output of agencies. And I was trying to picture what does a creative in each of these quadrants look like, and who delivers it and how. And I wonder whether you can give us any insight into your own views of what might creative output in the future look like. Who will be the people and how will they deliver the creative thinking and executions that the client is looking for? And perhaps some of your existing models might give us a feel for that. Where does creativity come from? Could we start, perhaps, Sarah, with you?
Yeah. Although I'm the least creative person on the whole panel, so this is a good place to start. The only way is up. So when we think about creativity, as a technology company, when we think about it, we think about bridging the content stack and the ad tech stack. So there's lots of
Could you explain that?
Yes, sorry, big apologies. So ad tech, by the ad tech stack, I mean all the kind of the very smart pipes that can help you target ads. So it's great now with programmatic targeting. We can take a piece of content and we can channel it to the right person in the right place at the right time. You know the dream. It's not always true, but it's a lot more targeted than it used to be. And with our own targeting, we apply the emotional graph to that. So that's all great. Except if you don't have the right content going through the pipes, it's all worthless. And this is where, even as a technology provider, the content is key. And getting the right kind of creative for the format is crucial. So I think having creative teams, brains, companies working together with technical teams, brains, communities. It might just be one person if you found the unicorn. If you haven't, it's going to be separate teams working together. It's absolutely key. So if you're creating for video, what are you creating for sound off? Are you creating for skippable? Are you creating for long form? Is it 15 second? Is it looping? There are all these technical format considerations that come into play. So increasingly that conversation and dialogue between creatives and techies is becoming more important.
And for you, James, what does creativity mean?
Well, I'll come back to that, but I'll start by talking about what it looks like for us.
Great.
And so we have a couple of different types of roles within our business. We have product managers or service designers, designers and developers. And we form what we call product cells. So these are small multidisciplinary teams of people, between 3 and 5 people in size, and they work throughout the project from beginning to end. So it's not like a creative has it here, a developer has it there, a tester has it there. They're all together in the same room, at the same table, at the same time. And we think that that approach brings different perspectives and context to a problem, which is really important. Those teams are very similar to how a team at Facebook might look, or Amazon, or any other large tech organization. So we like to mold our teams in a slightly different way and increasingly encourage the businesses that we work with to do the same as well. Now, the challenge being, that there aren't many of these people, which is a real shame. But something we do a lot as well is start to think about how you can bring stimulus into those groups and how you can create creative environments. So we work with the right types of people and stimulus to be able to help us do that, and also kind of start to think about how we, to a certain degree, productize how it is that we work. So when we have a early stage problem, here's how we kind of develop that into, a solution. Here's the types of customer insight, market insight, business insight that we're using to frame that in the right way and think about then moving that forward.
Very interesting. What's Mother's take on this, Katie?
At Mother, we talk about being a destination for creative people. And there's a little asterisk every time we show that on a slide. And the asterisk takes you to a tiny little footnote that says clients and agency alike. So for us, creativity doesn't reside in the creative department, and it never has done. But it doesn't just reside within the agency. The onus is on the agency and the client to work in partnership with all of the partners you have in production, in execution, to really deliver on the creative output. I don't think that's going to change. I think that no matter which quadrant you find yourself in the future, creativity, in its definition as problem solving, will be the lifeblood of our industry. It just might not mean that what we create looks the same or is created in the same way as it used to be. But I don't think we're looking at the death of creativity yet.
And so, Miles, from your broader perspective, what do you think that says then about the role of marketing in the client organisation, and are they the creative department, therefore, within a big business? And what does it say for the sorts of business model that we work with our clients on?
I think the creativity still sort of resides in the realms of the agency, consultancy, whatever you want to call yourself. I think that this is the business model in terms of the creative team and creativity in terms of what used to be referred as look and feel, a big idea. I think taking smaller, newer agencies, there's less baggage around how other more mature businesses used to work and do things. So I find that with the smaller, more startup businesses, the ones that have come from very different sort of backgrounds, they don't have that, and they tend to work very collaboratively, like James is doing. And you've got the creatives working with the data people, create the insights with the technologists, and there's less of that division. What I'm seeing amongst the more brand-led and consultancies and communication business I've worked with, I work with one at the moment that does everything from TV ads through to having 60 technologists on site with a major automotive retailer. So hugely diverse way of working. So they've got separate challenges in terms of how what creativity looks like. I don't think creativity resides necessarily in just look and feel. I mean, lots of people can be creative, and it could be more ideas-led creativity or technology solutions that are creative. There's lots of different aspects to that.
Creative processes, I think, are
Maybe that's
underrated.
it. Yeah.
And interesting, I think, your last question, you touched on the business model. I think sort of this space doesn't realise the value of the creative processes. We got a brief last week, and someone asked us in 2 days to give them a series of digital propositions. But actually, we've designed a way of how we can take you from a problem through to a proposition. It's how we're creating value around what we're doing. We're not going to just give that away without having met you. We actually get that every now and then, and it's like, hang on a minute. We've worked really hard to think about what's a good way to do this. We'd rather be in the room with you and maybe even some of your customers while we're doing this, rather than kind of us doing over here and giving it to you for free and then charging for the delivery of it. Management consultancy wouldn't do that.
I think we can learn quite a lot from that, don't you? In our own business. Thank you for that. So, we've covered off creativity. The other thing I wanted to pick up on was this idea of personalization and authenticity, and what you felt that meant for the way in which we work with clients to develop brands for the future. Given the time, I think I'll limit it to 2 of you on the panel. And then we'll come on to a final question. So, Katie, can I start with you?
Yeah, I feel like we've been talking about personalization as a trend forever, and it is the holy grail to have the right stuff going down the right tubes to the right person at the right time. But I think there's something bigger in the authenticity and personalization piece that certainly rung out in the work that was awarded at Cannes and at DNAD, that also is the work that is connecting most in the real world with people. And that's the convergence between great work that does good, social purpose and force for good, not being the domain of CSR or a small initiative, but actually being embedded in the core idea. That, for me, is the way we'll be able to be personally relevant, doing good in culture, and also that sustain quadrant will end up by 2025 not being a nice place to be, but a must-do for everyone, no matter where we are. So.
Thank you. And Sarah, you have a point of view.
I think this is, I love this. I think this is so critical, and it's critical for lots of reasons. It's critical from a marketing perspective. Melanie, you were talking about how they used to be called they used to be called marketing directors, and now they're CMOs. I think we'll see more CMOs becoming CEOs as Katie's vision plays out, because as the behaviour and the dream, the vision. So what we say and what we do as brands, it has to be closer than ever before. There will not be able to be any difference between what we say and how we behave in 10 years' time because of all the transparency. And what that means is your marketing function doesn't just become, this is what we say we do, this is how we position. It's, well, no, this is what we actually are. And this is the purpose, and this is our mission, and this is our driving force. I know when we work with brands who are very interested in emotional resonance, and measuring emotional intensity, the ones that do it most successfully are the ones that have genuine authenticity and purpose and mission. So they inhabit both the bottom left, they think about sustainability, they think about how they want to be real, and then they also think about the top right-hand side. This is also a huge business trend as well, which is the other exciting thing as an entrepreneur. We've seen there's books, David Jones' book, Who Cares Wins, was a big leading light here. There's another one launched last week called Mission, and it's all about how the businesses that succeed in the 21st century are going to be the ones that have purpose, mission. We see this in social video. Last year in the viral video chart, we rank all the most shared ads of the year. And last year we saw more videos than ever before that were either by charities or by brands partnering with charities, or by brands that have their own charities and are promoting social good. So I think this is a trend that's going to roll and roll.
That's rather good for our president then, thinking about it, who has a presidential agenda around here for good.
Yes.
So and this was a topic at Cannes.
Yeah, I mean, at the Film Awards on Saturday night, they gave the Grand Prix for Good, and it went to Ice Bucket Challenge and ALS, and there was a standing ovation where the whole room was in floods of tears, because it was such an impactful, emotional sense of what our industry could do if we put, not that necessarily our industry started the Ice Bucket Challenge, but what communications in its broadest sense could do in terms of galvanizing not just the industry, but the world for good.
Which brings, I think, is a very neat segue into talking about talent, because one of the things that we are talking about in agencies at the moment is how can you attract talent and what are they looking for? And one of the things they're looking for is companies that have an approach and attitude to life that they can relate to. So perhaps just could we go to the two of you, the two guys here, and ask what you think the route to finding talent is and how you go about it. Perhaps we'll start with you, James. How do you go about finding the talent that you need, and what tips can you give us on
Sure.
where to find them?
I mean, I think it's probably the biggest challenge we have as a business, actually,
Right.
identifying people to come work with us. We actually have a lot of job applicants, but it's finding the right type of people, and we are struggling to actually find out the right type of profile. So we have got a couple of ex-agency people who work with us, but the majority of people have been at Amazon previously, or smaller startups, or might even just been freelancing, may even been sort of client side. So I think it's a tough thing to try and find them. It's a tough thing sometimes to describe, what the job is. So, we use product manager, service designer slightly interchangeably. That offends some people, but it's because our projects change a little bit. So sometimes we might have to do product management style work. Sometimes we have to do service design work. And some of those industries are kind of more emergent, and there are not that many people necessarily that know they have that skill set and would be looking for that job role and would know where to search for it. So in terms of what we try and create, though, I think good people want to work with very talented other individuals. They want to work in the right way. They want to have a sense of autonomy about how they're working, and they want to work on interesting, stimulating challenges that is going to get them out of bed in the morning. But in terms of what we're going about doing, we've built relationships with people like Hyper Island, Makers Academy, General Assembly, places that are doing sort of intense courses around digital design, creativity, and we're attracting people from there. We're also kind of building a community of peers around the business, doing events, those types of things, and I think we might try and create sort of our own training content as a way of bringing people into the business, one, to onboard the people that join us, but also as a way to attract people who might take that training elsewhere.
Excellent. Miles?
Well, just to reiterate James's point, I think talent's probably the number one issue, certainly with the clients that I work with, and probably the biggest inhibitor to growth as well. I mean, you not be able to find the right people means you can't charge and you can't grow. So a huge issue. I think, all I can do is really talk about how my clients are looking to solve and what I can see is happening at the moment. So I guess one of them is grow your own, and it's about hiring smart people if you can do it. It's obviously laborious and takes time away from other things, but if you can do that, that's what some of my clients are trying to do. I think the whole partnering and incubating thing that I think you guys do as well is in terms of bringing in other partners into the business, into the agency, give them desk space. There might be perma-lancers or people you use on a regular basis, other partners. I think there you've got the immediacy of being able to grab them and work with them rather than having to necessarily coordinate them externally. But I think also some people are also having those better relationships with universities or colleges, especially on the product design side and also on the tool development side. I've got a client who's working with, I think it's Warwick University's data department to develop predictive analytics for retailers. And the only way they can find those sorts of people are within these universities and doing PhDs. So I know from doing a master's many years ago that a lot of the course that I did a computer science master's, and a lot of it was irrelevant. I mean, we were designing, using 10-year-old microprocessors to design stuff, and it's just completely irrelevant to the outside world. So if we can any way of making courses more relevant to people, more relevant to the industry, that'd be a fantastic thing to do. I think the last one, I think also, is that a lot of people have this sort of hang up about having to hire people into the agency, and I'm a big believer in that the future model of an agency will not have a very lean head office with a very disparate workforce. You may have a technologist working in Japan, or a chief strategy officer working in Dubai somewhere, and somewhere of better collaboration on projects. But there still seems to be a need to all work together. I think that's going to have to go, because it's not going to get any better in terms of talent.
And you have to start early as well. So I think getting computing into the curriculum is a big help. There's a campaign that I'm part of called Your Life. This is about getting more kids doing maths aged 16 to 18. We have the lowest level of mathematicians in the developed world. This is really terrifying for us as an economy, because pretty much, unequivocally, mathematical achievement equates to prosperity of a nation. And this is going to be increasingly the case as we become a more digital economy. More jobs require problem solving, digital skills. Maths is a great training for that. So I think there's lots of work to do really early on with kids and as they go into teenagers, to helping them to understand that you can do maths and be creative, and that there's not a gap between being technical and being creative. That if you can do both, that is fantastic and will really stand you in good stead in a digital economy.
So aware of time, I don't want to say a big, huge thank you to the panel for what they've said so far. We're going to open up to questions, but I want, just before we do that, I think it's worth just getting Melanie to say a few more words, because this whole project is about providing food for thought for agencies to think about where they're going to take their future. And we want to posit an iteration of this project which then puts it into the reality of your working environment. And Melanie, if you just wanted to say a few words about it, it would be another thing it would be nice to get your reactions to when we go into the Q&A. So thanks very much.
Yeah, that was really fascinating. Thank you, everybody, for doing that. Not least, because I remember 10 years ago when we did the first exercise, one of my biggest frustrations was realising there's so much intelligence, creativity and ability within the agency world, within this sector. But so often that is just there solving one client brief after another client brief after another, and not actually spending time thinking about, rejuvenating or transforming the whole model. And I think it's a really interesting debate. Oh, sorry, I'm getting carried away, so I better stop now. Yeah, so this is really about, can we take this forward and recognising that, it's really about empowering agencies to transform themselves. So I think we're really talking to people who've already got an established model, but they'd like to kind of accelerate some of these new ways of working and doing business with clients. So what we're proposing to do is to run a sort of workshop for developing people's skills to take all the material and run workshops with their own agencies and their own clients. So we're not saying there is just one way to do it, but to familiarise people who come on this one-day course, which apparently is on something called a How-To Friday in October. So it'll be a day long, and we'll immerse people who come in the material, give you tools, cards, grids, whatever, and lots of different ways of engaging both your own agency, senior staff, your own agency, members, but also thinking about how it actually applies to clients and how you might work with clients. Because we're certainly just getting a lot of traction from this already, and just as a starting point for the right kind of conversations. So the idea is to put together this, it's really a coaching workshop, moderators for taking it back into the agency world. So that's going to be sort of the next step, which is taking it out of the report and giving people tools to actually try and use this internally and externally. So that's kind of the next step, hopefully.
That probably is quite collaborative. So that's good. It fits with the theme.